I want to start today's episode with a question from the audience. Remember, if you want to submit a question, you go to patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. And Thomas writes in, he says, how do you feel about some college conferences canceling interconference games, especially the interstate rivalries that happen to be in different conferences like Clemson and South Carolina? It's very, very sad. You know, it's possible we will not have the Clemson-South Carolina game. I mean, I hope they find a way to make it happen. I think it'd be really cool. But the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have confirmed that they are only playing conference games. The ACC is considering it. There's no word. There's no really info on the Big 12 or the SEC. I'd be surprised if the SEC canceled their small games against Liberty and, Northwest New Mexico State University of Middle Idaho. Like, that's a clearly made up name, but something like that where I think Alabama's going to play their cupcake games because people like it. It's good revenue and it's a good preseason for Alabama and SEC teams. There's a lot to unpack with this story of, certain conferences saying we're only playing conference games and the cascading effect of whether or not other conferences are going to do it as well. The number one thing I have to say is just a lot of sadness. I'm very disappointed. I was very much looking forward to Ohio State and Oregon. I thought Oregon could lose to both North Dakota State and then get crushed by Ohio State. And I'll be honest, I'm not going to lie. It would have been kind of fun to watch Oregon fans get humbled a little bit as they got blown out by Ohio State. There's going to be no USC-Alabama game, no Michigan versus University of Washington. A lot of good games have been canceled. Not really. Some good games have been canceled. Mostly the games that have been canceled have been kind of filler content or fluff. And I'll be honest, if this fall happens, if a season happens this fall, it could be the most fun fall in a really, really long time. Because, I've said for a long time, as long as I can remember on the podcast, I have said that if the Pac-12 played in a vacuum and they only played each other, it would be amazing. It would be so good, and we're going to get that this year. We're going to get that thing I've talked about as a hypothetical saying, maybe someday we'll get this. It's actually going to happen this year. In my opinion, my strong opinion, whatever you want to call it, someone will get mad at me, I don't really care. In my opinion, the Pac-12 is the fourth or fifth best conference in the Power Five. The best Pac-12 school doesn't compete with the best schools in other conferences. They have to offer. Well, think about, I live in the Pac-12 country. I watch a lot of Pac-12 games, and you can't compare the best of the Pac-12 to Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Clemson, and they barely compare to teams like Michigan or LSU or Auburn, Georgia, other schools like that. Maybe Florida's in there. There's a lot more talent in other conferences around the country. But the Pac-12 is incredibly fun to watch and really even with itself. When Pac-12 games are on Pac-12, oh my gosh, it's such good football. It's entertaining. It's fun. And if you remove the comparison of the Pac-12 to other conferences and you just watch Pac-12 conference games, it's very entertaining, very dramatic football. The Big Ten in a vacuum is going to be interesting and fun and amazing. Here's what we lost for the most part. Oregon's not going to play Hawaii. Ohio State's not going to play Buffalo. Penn State's not going to play San Jose State. We're not losing a lot. We're losing some games, but we're not losing the majority of great football games because of this announcement. What we lost is a lot of filler content. I hate filler content. When a movie that should be 90 minutes goes on for 110 minutes? When a movie has 20 minutes of length too long, I get frustrated. I'm like, please, can we wrap it up? We didn't need every single bow tied. I was here for the fun story. I don't need to know about this side character's best friend. I don't care about them having a happy ending. So I don't know. I think having less filler content's good. And this college football season is likely going to be jam-packed with great content, great matchups, meaningful games, dramatic games, really good finishes. And other than a few big games, we're mostly losing fluff, filler content, bad, not very good games. Now, another quiet benefit of conferences only playing games against other teams in their conferences. Conference-only games pushes the season and the opening week back for a lot of college football programs. And it buys colleges more time. They're hoping and praying that COVID-19, that coronavirus, calms down a little bit by the end of September, early October. Now, I do believe that, and I hope that an exception can be made for games like, big rivalry interstate games. Why can't Clemson play against South Carolina? I hope that can happen. It'd be really cool if it does. And people in South Carolina are certainly going to try very hard to make that happen. But the reason why conferences are trying to play only conference games is because having fewer games and only playing meaningful games, at least from a PR perspective, reduces the risk of spreading coronavirus, COVID-19. And honestly, I think college football this year might be doomed. I don't know if we're going to get a season this fall. I think no matter what, SEC is probably going to have a season regardless because they're a different breed over there. They care a lot more. My dad and I were talking about it a lot. I've said that for weeks on the show. But here's one thing that's really an angle that's interesting to me. The NFL has a lot easier time containing their players in a quarantine. Number one, they're paying them. The NFL's paying their players. If a college kid wants to hang out with their friends and break quarantine, it's going to be really hard to stop them. What does college have over their players? They're not paying them. The NFL can say, you know what, we're going to break your contract. If you go out and hang out with their friends, the NFL can say, we're not going to pay you. Your contract's over. We can't risk having people infected. It's harder to control college kids. Not to mention, think about this. Some people are going to go to classes. Some people are going to be going to college classes this fall. You're telling me it's not going to get spread somehow? I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I know that college football is going to have a lot harder time containing COVID-19 than the NFL. Now, I have one final thought. If teams are playing conference-only games, especially if other conferences announce this, what is going to happen to BYU or Notre Dame? Both BYU and Notre Dame are not in a conference. And if every conference closes their door, then who are they going to play against? If it wasn't obvious before, it's very clear to me now. Notre Dame especially needs to join a conference. They're not bigger and better than everybody else. They think they are. They're not. I know people who've played there. There's this prestige. They always talk about themselves like they're this big Alabama-level football program. They're not. If Alabama has dominated college football for years and they're in a conference, Notre Dame better ante up and get in a program, get in a conference. And think about this. The Notre Dame football schedule has 6 ACC football teams on it. At one point, they play 5 ACC football programs in a row. They have an SEC program, Arkansas. They have 2 Pac-12 schools, USC and Stanford, and a Big Ten school, Wisconsin. So 3 of the Notre Dame games are already wiped away. And if something happens with the ACC and they decide to only play conference games, then Notre Dame is screwed. They're really in trouble. So I think Notre Dame's going to have to find something to do and make it happen and make things work this year. It's possible that the ACC honors the Notre Dame games and says, we're going to play them anyway. You got to remember that Notre Dame is a member of the ACC in every sport except for football, because football's weird and Notre Dame football thinks they're bigger than they are. But I think they really should just fully join the ACC. It's meaningless and nonsensical for Notre Dame to not have a football conference, and it was never more clear than the other day when the Big 12 or the Big 10 and the Pac-12 announced that they're only going to play conference games. Notre Dame should join a conference.